ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul Lucas. I'm the President of the Queensland branch of the Australian Institute of International Affairs, and I'd love to welcome you all here tonight. Thank you for coming for our New Colombo Plan event. I'll have our Youth Vice President Ingrid Valladares officially welcome our guest panellists in a minute. But in addition to welcoming you, I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Yagara and the Turrbal people, and I would pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, sovereignty never ceded. So thank you very much, everyone here. Just to say a few words, I'm thrilled that we could have tonight's event about the new Colombo plan, and I'm delighted that not only are there people here who are interested, but also, of course, online, and this will be recorded for playing back by people later on YouTube. The Colombo plan originally was first established in 1951, and we're not always successful at what we do diplomatically in a number of Western countries, but the partnership between a number of the Commonwealth countries and Asian countries reflected in the Colombo plan, and particularly the long-term scholarships program, was absolutely outstanding. Many leaders of Asian countries were provided with tertiary education through the Colombo plan, and that sort of soft diplomacy is sure as eggs cheaper and a lot less costly in terms of confrontation than military or saber rattling or economic subjugation. And so what a wonderful program it was. The Abbott government in 2014 established a new Colombo plan, and great credit to them for doing that. And you're going to hear from panellists tonight who have been members of the new Colombo plan. One of my sons was a new Colombo scholar to Indonesia, and I know how much he enjoyed that and benefited from that as well. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Ingrid to start the proceedings.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us tonight. I would also like to thank Gemma Troller, who has been also helping behind the scenes with the organization of this event. And of course, even like the food here tonight is due to New Colombo plan funding as well. So thank you very much for that. And also thank you very much, all of you, for joining us tonight. It's very exciting to have you all here. I am not an Australian citizen, but I've heard a lot about the New Colombo plan, and it's so exciting even for me to be able to talk to you about this experience, and I'm pretty sure that all the people that registered tonight feel the same. So I will start by introducing our panelists tonight. So we have Lachlan Power here. So Lachlan is a graduate data scientist at Suncorp with a Bachelor of Business and a minor in engineering. Inspired by a tutor, he reignited his dream to study overseas, and with the New Colombo Plan Mobility Grant, participated in a development economics project in Mumbai, India. There, he assisted NGOs in improving community well-being. He's passionate about problem solving and making a positive impact. Lachlan seeks a permanent role as he completes his graduate program, which will actually, I think you'll get there very soon. Then we have Jared Noble. Jared is a four-year sustainable business and public policy student at Griffith University. In 2023, he received the New Colombo Plan Fellowship to study municipal solid waste management in Japan, which sparked his interest in Repair Cafe. Jared aspires to work in policy advisory, focusing on building eco-friendly, climate-resilient communities. We have also Gemma Treller here. Gemma is in her final year at Griffith University, studying government and international relations and criminology. Focused on the intersection of conflict and climate change, she engages in cross-cultural projects promoting sustainability and dialogue for marginalized populations. For the New Colombo Plan, she studied in Hong Kong. She studied environmental health and architecture, gaining insights into urban planning and socio-political dynamics. Gem is dedicated to driving sustainability and inclusion in global institutions, aiming to advocate for progressive transformation in vulnerable regions. And then, last but not least, we have Misa Mohabari. Misa holds a Bachelor of Nutrition and Dietetics from Queensland University of Technology. For the New Colombo Plan, she interned in Thailand and Japan across sectors like education, mental health, and traditional medicine. This experience provided her with insights into Eastern and Western healthcare approaches. Miss is passionate about the vital role of a healthy relationship with food and body in promoting physical and mental well-being. So yeah, if you can please all. So with Gemma, we were trying to get, with the panelists to get the experiences of people that have access the New Colombo Plan scholarships and the New Colombo Plan programs, the mobility programs. So I would like to first ask with the first question, if you could, any of you share your experiences of applying to the New Colombo Plan programs. How was the process? I would like to hear possibly from one person that has gotten the scholarship and another one for the mobility programs. So if anyone wants to, start by telling us a little bit of how was that experience of applying. I know many of the people here attending in person and online have heard a little bit, but it will be good to get some insights from you.
Just press the button.
Yeah, the one.
Hello? There we go. All right, now it's working. So I went through the mobility plan, and the application process for it was fairly straightforward. It was mainly the interesting part about it was writing about yourself. I had to write about why I wanted this program or why I wanted to join this program. And that related about talking about myself and talking about the goals that I had and how those may align with what this program actually tries to aspire to be or aspire to attain. So it was pretty straightforward from that point. I got a response from them via email, I believe, whether I was in or out. And then after that, I moved forward from there. I went through some lessons or precursor lessons to actually departing to the place that I went. And then I was off. So I wouldn't say it's very complex or anything. The only part about it that was really different or interesting was that writing section, because you really had to think about who am I, what do I want, and what do I actually want to do, because that was essential to get across there.
Thank you for that, Lachlan. Yeah.
Does anybody from the scholarship want to?
Yeah. I would say that it was probably somewhat the opposite, in that it was a very long, tumultuous process, but in the best ways. So I was introduced to the New Colombo Plan Scholarship through the what was the Griffith Honours College, it is now the Griffith Student Academy of Excellence. And basically they told us about the program, what it was and what it offered. And from there, I decided to go through the rounds and put my hand up. The way that it works with the scholarship process is that the university will shortlist you. A list of applicants, maybe 15, and you go through the round to see if you've actually made it through. And then from that process and the acceptance, it was a process of writing several different drafts for the written application and also preparing for the interviews. I would agree that it was probably one of the hardest parts of the applying for it was trying to actually find why you wanted to do it. I think a lot of people go into it thinking, oh, I'd love to study this, but if you want to get the New Colombo Plan Scholarship, it's important to remember that you need to know exactly, you need to have a clear plan. It can't be broad. And so the metaphor that Victoria Menzies would always use with me, who's the scholarship advisor at Griffith, would say, what is on your Christmas tree and what are the few things that you need to build to, what are the few select baubles that you're going to have that are going to shine on there that are going to not only build your profile and allow you to get this scholarship, and also what's the star on the top and what's the ultimate goal. And so the process for me was just consistently writing drafts and then having to restart all of it because, they needed to improve it and, nervously doing interviews and building that skill up. But it's through that process of trial and error, and that support that I had at Griffith that allowed me to get it. And I don't think I would be here without that hardship. And then from there begins the process of applying to live in a new country, and that's a whole new can of worms. So yeah, but it was brilliant.
Thank you very much, Lachlan and Jared, for sharing that. And I'm very curious with this question because I've heard from many applicants that it's a very competitive process. Not only in terms of, having the good grades and everything, or was it the same for you? Do you feel that everything was based on your grades, on, your GPA, or was it also more like that personal aspect of what you can give? I don't know if Lachlan, Jared, or Gemma Misa wants to answer that question.
Yeah, sure.
For my case, doing the mobility, my GPA didn't really matter. Especially because I did architecture and urban and environmental health. Obviously, I don't study either of those things. it was really just a last minute opportunity, and I jumped at it because it seemed really exciting. I was so fortunate that there was a professor who had left her phone number asking if you had any questions when it was time to apply. And I rang her and I said, are you sure that someone studying what I study compared to what this project is overseas is right for this program? And we ended up having about an hour-long conversation, and it really just verified that your grades aren't everything if you have the right ethic and the right motivation to do it in the first place.
Thank you for that. Misa, do you want to add anything? Or
Yeah. Yeah, I guess academic excellence is one of the 4 selection criteria. So the others are like leadership and community engagement, resilience and adaptability, and then how you want to personally contribute to the New Colombo Plan goals. And I feel like even within the academic engagement one, yes, GPA is like one component of that, but even like linking how academically you want to contribute. So like, I think I mentioned in my application how I was like, going like as a nutrition student, going to these leadership and development seminars at QUT and learning about all these different kind of perspectives towards engaging with people. And this desire for like knowledge exchange and learning from different people was something that I put in the academic excellence. So even within academic excellence, that's understood quite, like, I think the phrase they use is high order thinking and not just purely like the GPA in that sense.
It's fantastic to hear your experiences because, yeah, most of the experiences that I've heard from other people is like, oh, I needed to get a 7, like a high distinction. And usually they forget that life is not only the grades that we get in uni, but also, you know, all these other skills that you get through the involvement in university activities or even with the community. So it's really good to hear from yourselves as well that this is something that people should be also thinking of when they're applying and not necessarily backing up, you know, from not applying. So thank you very much for sharing that. So moving on, what are some key attributes someone interested in applying to a new Colombo Plan program, mobility program or scholarship should highlight in their application?
I've got 3 main points for, I did a bit of writing down because I know I'd forget if I didn't. But there are 3 main things that are important when doing a new Colombo Plan scholarship or mobility grant. The first one is genuine markability for me. I don't think, you know, while we're talking about GPA, like, yes, it's important to have some, like, you know, academic excellence, and of course you have community involvement and things like that, but you need to sell yourself as well, right? You're going to have an interview round if you decide to do the scholarship, and you need to convince them that you are a worthwhile investment, because ultimately that's what you are. This is soft diplomacy. This is going into the Indo-Pacific region, and they want to know that you are going to be a student that does well, that connects with people, and that does what they're going to say they're going to do. And that brings me to my next point, which is being results-driven. So ultimately, this being an investment, they want to see how you can give back to Australia when you come to the Indo-Pacific and gain that experience. What are you going to bring back to the communities through your time abroad that's going to help this country? How are you going to build strong relationships that's ultimately going to make a positive impact? And then the third point I have is resilience. So how do you overcome hardship? You know, as strong as anyone says they are, moving to anyone who has moved to a different country, who doesn't know the language, doesn't know a lot of the customs, doesn't know the way of life, that is going to be a challenge. And you need to show in your application that you have faced adversity and you've overcome that. Now, that looks different for everybody, and that doesn't mean that because your life hasn't been as hard as others, that you won't be like eligible for it or that you don't overcome adversity, but you need to show how you have done that and how you are a strong-willed person that you can overcome the challenges that will come your way when having an experience like this.
Thank you very much, Jared. Would anyone else like? Okay. Yep.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to add on to some more of what Jared was saying. So I may not necessarily know exactly what they're looking for in the applications, but I know what I brought, and I also know what everybody else brought, and I observed that in them whilst we were over there. It was a serious amount of motivation and engagement. So every single person there, you need to believe in yourself and be driven, because if not, every single person there will actually almost overpower you, because everybody there is raising their hand, everybody there is asking questions, everybody there is incredibly open to the culture that they're trying to immerse themselves in. So in other words, you actually learn to bring out the best in yourself, or you have to show that you can bring out the best in yourself and not hide away in those moments, because you won't get as much out of it. And that's what I observed in everybody there. They were all trying to bring out the best in themselves, and they were all incredibly motivated. Everybody had questions, and everybody was really, really present in every moment that we were there. And an insane amount of teamwork. So you're pretty much going to be living, if you're in a group, you're going to be living with these people as well as working with them. So you have to be good at working and collaborating in a team.
Just thinking about the attributes of that they might be looking for in my own application. I also made some notes as well. But yeah, I think they also are looking for the spirit of the New Colombo plan, which can be measured both like qualitatively and quantitatively. So you can measure the impact and be like, you know, using that kind of active language of I sustained or led or beyond like participating or I was in this. But just some small kind of example was in my written application to DFAT. I drew on this experience when I was 14 and I was like living in Japan, and I wrote like how in the volleyball team, my singular role was to collect the balls, to just run around and like put the balls in the basket. And then I wrote how like my coach told me that they hadn't seen anybody who did that role with more heart or intent. And that was like a one sentence that I put in there. And then when I was in the interview, the final round, that's actually what they brought up and they asked about, and they said that's the spirit of the New Colombo plan. And so I think if you can weave in, I guess the human components of nothing is beyond you or like below you, or that attitude of wanting to learn from others and always seeking proactively opportunities, or those kind of characteristics, you can weave in narratively in your applications.
Okay, it's fantastic to hear everything that you've said. It's like a mix of, you know, kind of the KPIs of what are you doing, how you can measure, but also bringing that reflective exercise of, you know, not only what's going on in your life in the present, but as you mentioned, Misa, like, you know, even like these little experiences that back then might have been insignificant, but, you know, like just doing the things by heart, I guess, is like something really important. And it's very helpful to hear these aspects as well in terms of being self-driven. I guess me, when I came here to Australia, was exactly the same, you know, kind of just being able to, you know, come up with ideas, implement stuff, so that also people can look at you and being like, hey, I'm here, I'm able to do this, I'm happy to help with whatever I need. And yeah, it's incredible. So now let's hear about your time overseas. So what has been the top highlight of your experiences abroad? So yeah, let's see if we can actually get all of you talking this time, because I'm sure your experiences have been different.
Yeah, so I was reflecting, and I guess one big highlight was actually outside of because the New Colombo plan has the component of internships, language training, and then student exchange. It was actually the activities that happened on the weekend. So I decided to, with a friend, organize these monthly picnics, and it was really like, I don't want to go too long. I'm going to keep this concise, but basically, I was in Tokyo Park with some friends, and I was like looking out, and I didn't really have any friends in Tokyo yet, thinking, I'm not able to do the student exchange component, so how am I going to make deep and meaningful friendships? Like, kind of bummed. And then a few weeks later, I met a friend 15 years ago that I knew when I was a kid in primary school in Adelaide. And she was on student exchange, and she was like, let me introduce you to my friends. So we started having these picnics at the park, and we would bring together the Japanese students, the international students and their friends, and the New Colombo Plan scholars. And then we would pick a theme each month, for example, about happiness. And we'd be like, are people in your country happy? Where does happiness come from? And we would talk about friendship one month, or beauty, or education. And then through that experience, because the New Colombo Plan in essence is all about connection, through maybe just 3 quick examples. like I was sitting next to somebody at like a writers conference, and then the next day I saw them at Tokyo Station, and then they were like, "Oh, would you like to come to the picnic?" And then they came, and then kind of experiences like that. I saw somebody's mother at the bank while I was at the bank, and then that the daughter is somebody that I had been on the volleyball team with, and then her daughter was in Tokyo at that time, so she came to the picnic and met the new Colombo Plan scholars. And so that experience of realizing, like, actually the opportunity to connect is always there, like ever present. And I think being able to feel like that as a new Colombo Plan scholar, we're ambassadors like of Australia, but that really means like seeking connection and friendship. So I think what can happen beyond the formal arrangements of your program, you can really go out and connect and initiate and create whatever, you know, your heart desires.
I think I want to draw on 2 examples of my time over there that really started to add up for me, if that's okay.
Of course.
So there was 2 key moments there that really, I guess, put me in a sort of state of realization, or just a state of thought about myself and people in general. So leading up to my time in India, that's where I went. I was doing a development economics program, so I was reading up and listening to books talking about development economics. And one of the interesting stats that they brought up, or relationships that is often drawn on, is you can measure the level of poverty you might see in a nation by the level of light that that nation actually has. And I didn't really know what that meant until I actually crossed the border into India via the plane in the middle of the night, because leaving Australia, it was early in the morning, so you could still see lights, rural towns everywhere. As far as the eye could see, it doesn't matter how remote you were, you can still see lights throughout Oz. I transitioned into India. I woke up, I was sleeping on the plane, and I looked out the window, pitch black. I had no idea we had already gotten to India. The place was so dark, I had never seen anything like that before. And to be honest, that scared me. It scared me quite a lot because I had never encountered anything like this before. It was boring. It was something I'd never seen. So that was my first encounter with India, the country. And about 1.5 weeks later, I was probably happier than ever, as a mother inside of one of the slums that we were surveying was stuffing savory snacks into my pockets because she loved me so much and wanted me to finish all the food that she had brought out, because I was the only person out of the group that would keep finishing her food because I So from that first point where I actually saw India to that moment where I was having this amazing time with this lady, it really came into perspective for me. It was about as close as I think I could get to the astronaut flying up in space, seeing the whole planet, saying, wow, it's just one massive world and we are all people. We're all people. Just because we're separated by borders or by oceans doesn't mean that we're any different from one another. We have different cultures, but it's a beautiful thing to embrace. So that's something that I really loved about my time over in India.
Thank you for sharing that.
Wow. 2 very profound, incredible answers. I feel a little bad about what I wrote now, but no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I'd say the highlight experience would be the friends that I made there. I was probably the opposite of Misa in what I did, in that I probably enjoyed the nightlife a little bit more in Tokyo. We were having much less in-depth conversations, but I think because I went to Hosei University and did the study component, I lived in a dormitory, and through some of the classes, I got to make friends across a range of like different backgrounds and views. So I made friends from Japan, China, Hong Kong, the US, Mexico, the UK, Germany, Spain, Italy, and much, much more. And pretty much because in Japan, obviously it's a lot cheaper to go out rather than Australia. We'd make a tradition every Friday night. We would go to the hubs in Japan, which is the British pubs, and we would go out and we would party all night, And I know that might sound a bit unprofessional, but it's those memories of making friends that you'll remember the most. There's so many crazy stories and embarrassing photos around of, that you'll remember. But not only that, we still went out and saw the sights. For my friend's birthday, we went and rented a house in a coastal town, and we got an Airbnb, and we just enjoyed each other's company. And yeah, I still have group chats with them, and I text them every now and then, how you doing? And now if I need to want to travel the world again in the future, I've got a place to stay in Munich or Pennsylvania. So yeah, it's the friends that you make along the way that you'll truly remember the most.
Thank you. Mine is sort of similar. I'll just mention two things quite briefly. The first thing is definitely just the communities and the locals, connecting with them. It was my first time ever overseas, so it was quite an eye-opening and confronting experience at the same time. I loved, especially within the mobility program, because it is quite a fast-paced environment to get everything done in the couple of weeks that you have. But in that couple of weeks, we were given such an incredible opportunity to really be able to connect with the locals. And we did see that their trust developed with us. They didn't treat us like tourists, they treated us like friends. And by that, I mean that they led us into their temples and they showed us their spiritual beliefs and opened our eyes to the things that they do behind closed doors. And that was really very special to share with them. On that, one day we were on a rural island just connected to the South China Sea, and we had just come back from some swimming, and we climbed up this cliff, and there on this island there was boars everywhere, like wild boars, and we were having a barbecue just nearby, and one of the professors that we had there was, her daughter lived in Hong Kong. So as we're having this barbecue, these boars can smell these sausages, and so they start surrounding the barbecue, and the daughter of the professor gets up and starts barking horrendously like a dog to scare off these boars. And while it was it was hilarious. It just felt like such a bonding moment, and having the locals on the island as well just bear witness to all that. They were just laughing instead of treating us again like tourists, and it just felt very special to be connected, even when it was very embarrassing. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing those top highlights. Well, there are highlights, there are also challenges. During your time overseas, did you experience any challenges? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Maybe somebody else can take this on.
Yeah. Right. 100% the language barrier. I know that's obvious, but oh my goodness, if you are going to do a mobility grant or a scholarship, please, 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 please do some language training. My one biggest, not regret, but thing I would probably change if I had a time machine is I think I would take advantage of the NCP's language program that you can do. You can do separate time of full-time language study, and I wish I did that, because I obviously got a bit of the basic communication down, but being able to engage on that deeper level and that stronger understanding of the language, especially if you are going to a country that has quite a different language system than English. So, anywhere really, like a lot, like some places that, for example, the Pacific Islands that maybe speak English or French, but especially Mandarin or Korean or Japanese, where the structure's different and it's just completely different type of language. It was a challenge. Like, it was really hard, especially coming from Australia. But the way I overcame it, I guess, is just, that was the human spirit of trying to, you become this awesome mime that's like, how do I, Google Translate's best friend. But also just learning to adapt. And I think you'll find ways to adapt, and you'll find a friend that can translate for you, hopefully. But, be that person is what I would say. And I think as well, just to add to that struggle, I think it gave me this whole new perspective on how so many people come to Australia and, can't communicate or speak English, and how hard that is for, immigrants and migrants to come to this country and have that appreciation from such an isolated country like Australia. It is hard, and it is a real challenge, and it gives you that respect for people that bring their lives to a whole new place. So yeah, that was be my comment on that.
Thank you, Jared. Does anyone else wants to share any challenge? I'm sure there are challenges.
I actually had the same challenge, so in language, but from a slightly different perspective, in the sense of my Thai was very beginner, and when I went to the rural Thailand in Chiang Rai, and I was at a primary school, and I think it's a bit of, I guess, not a regret, but I had a lot of time where I was thinking, I wish I studied more, my lack of language is limiting me, and that kind of train of thought. And 100%, if you have the opportunity to learn before you go on program, that's so worthwhile. But upon reflection, I think what helped me overcome that was actually learning how children interact with people from other countries. And I realized children are the greatest ambassadors of connection. When they don't have language, they were this is in rural Thailand, they all whipped out their iPhones, they were using Google Translate, they were giving their lollies, they were drawing pictures of koalas and giving it. And I realized that language is a means for connection. So I was kind of thinking of it as, language is the end. I have to speak at this level, or we can get a bit caught up. Even with Japanese, there's, when you go to language school, it's N1 and N2, and it becomes a bit of a focus. But I think what helped me overcome that challenge was learning almost in this moment, how can I connect with what I currently have? And the desire to connect with this person will fuel my desire to learn the language.
Just quickly, I think one of the things that was also very difficult was being that it was a mobility, at least in my case, I didn't do a lot of research before I went. One of the struggles that I had over there was really just understanding the difference between norms here and norms there. Some of the laws especially in Hong Kong compared to mainland China, are very different compared to Australia, and there are things that you might see in another country that you think, is this person safe? Is this person okay? When in reality, it's very normal, it's very acceptable. And as much as, you form friendships, you formed an understanding of this culture, having that ability to say, okay, it's actually not my place to do anything here, even though you feel like you could. But again, you really need to understand the laws. And in my case, I didn't do anything, but that was very difficult to navigate and to feel after developing all these friendships, I felt a little bit helpless to help people when they might have needed it, if that makes sense.
Quickly, I did actually think of a challenge. Navigation and traffic. In Mumbai especially, it's incredibly crowded. It is insanely crowded. If you try to catch an Uber or a vehicle, you, especially during peak time, could end up there for 4 to 5 hours to go what might actually just be a 30-minute walk. So getting used to that was probably one big hurdle to overcome, but by the end of it, you really do start coming into your own. After the first week or so, it was easy walking with people through many cars and traffic that were backed up, and also just figuring out how to get to different locations. Even the way they handle addresses was different there. In Australia, it's address, number, your building number, street, postcode, suburb. In India, there was many other elements to it, like street, landmark. There was a postcode there, state, other things like that they needed to add into address that I just actually had a really hard time understanding. So navigation was a big one over there, but within the first week or so, just following other people's lead, you really learn how they get around.
Okay, so it's mainly language norms and navigation, getting used to different cultures as well. Well, you were in your time overseas. Did you have to do any other type of, I don't know, meetings with other, diplomatic officials in your countries? Was it only the programs or the studies that you were doing there, or did you also have to do some, ambassador, let's say, roles within the countries that you were visiting?
Only once at the Australian. I got a email from the Australian Embassy in Japan, and they were doing a program for university students that are actually studying Australian studies, and we're about to go do a tour of Australia. And so I went over to the embassy along with some other students, and we talked about like Australia and Japan and kind of built those connections. But I think that's also a good point in general. I know I'm hearing from other scholars who have gone to other countries. For example, if you intend to go to a Pacific island, they tend to be quite small populations. So if you're an Australian in a Pacific island country, make yourself known to the embassy that you are there. I know a girl, I heard her story when she went to Micronesia, and you know, they had a whole welcome party for her. I'm not saying that'll happen, especially if you go to if you're in Japan, it's like whatever. But so make yourself known to the embassy, because there will be those opportunities for like connections for like diplomacy and like meeting other people that are interested in our country and their country, and yeah, building that soft power.
Thank you. How has this experience impacted your personal and professional lives?
For me, it sounds a bit cliche, but I feel like it was life-changing. Even though it was a couple of weeks, I think I came back and it was quite overwhelming, having seen a completely different culture, connecting to completely different communities, and seeing those different norms, and coming back to Australia and thinking, what now? There's so much opportunity, especially internationally as well as here domestically. And I think in my case, it made me feel compelled to do more, and to do more research and to understand other cultures and issues they might be having, as well as things that Australia can learn from other countries as well. Especially with the new Colombo plan, they're really pushing now engagement in the Pacific Islands, and there is really so much to learn there, as well as Asia. And it's just made me feel such an intense curiosity that I didn't have before I went.
I think for me, for my personal life, the biggest change that I've found is that everyone is telling me, we get it, you lived in Japan for 9 months, because I stopped talking about it, because it was really an unforgettable experience. I think for a career shift, for me, adding on to what was said before, I think it really opens up your perspectives to what Australia can learn as a country, and how we should use our ideas to build a sustainable future collaboratively. You know, it's not just one idea excluded to one country. How can we implement all the best parts of everyone's systems and how they work and fit into our society? And I think as well, in terms of broadening your horizons, I think it's also important to remember as you do your new Colombo plan pitch, especially if you intend to do the scholarship, that you're not locked into that forever. And actually through my program, I kind of realized that whilst I did waste management, I kind of want to shift towards something else. I think doing waste management, for me at least, I realized that we should focus on the root of the problem, which is things like, consumerism, and building more sustainable communities. And so the way that I look at it is, instead of figuring out how we treat patients better with lung cancer, how do we get people to stop smoking? That's the way that I wanted to view it. And I think that's where my passions lie now. So I think that I guess it allowed me to open up my perspectives and perhaps find that even though what I went there for might not necessarily be what I want to do anymore, I think without that experience, I would have never really had that realization. And so many of those experiences of, like, for example, how Japan's such a walkable city, I think unexpectedly, my time over there made me realize, well, how do we make Australian cities to be more walkable and have better transport? Like, you never know until you go, like, what kind of opportunities or what kind of pathways that's going to take you on. And so I'd say that's the biggest career shift. And it really opens up, like I said before, like, it opens up that whole perspective of, you want to travel again and see new things and learn new things. I think it's good for sparking those passions.
I think for me, coming from a business degree, it was really interesting applying theory in such a real setting. When you study at university, it's a very few set of degrees that you can study that you can explicitly see, this is where I'm starting, this is where I'm going to be, this is where that work's going to be, like at the end. Engineering, as an example, in very specific fields. You can see what your journey will be like all the way through to the end. Studying something like international affairs, business, you get to learn a lot about what other people have done in the past and what they may have done. You may work with some examples, but for the most part, you might be working on it in your house or in the university. You don't really see how, or the connection. It's hard to see the connection between this kind of work and what actually goes on out there. When I was in India, I did everything. I gathered the data, communicated with the people there, learnt about them, and learnt about the different phenomena that were actually happening over there in India, and how these people were essentially creating these massive events that we would only normally talk about in a classroom. People doing things such as improving their education. We may talk about that when we're talking about how a developing nation can improve the living standards for everybody. Over in India, they are doing insane things such as giving all of their time, resources, and money into their child to go through, get a good education, and then be able to turn around and put back into the community. And that was something that was actually happening so many other places. And there were so many other initiatives like that, where people, even in the most harsh situation, were actually thinking about more than themselves, thinking about, I guess, ideas that I had only ever learnt about in a classroom and applying them every single day. So for me, what really happened was I got to connect these ideas I had learned about to real life, and I actually got to see how I can apply them, how they can actually help people. And it also solidified this idea for me that I like the work I do, and I know what I want to do. And primarily that is work that I know helps people. That's why I want to solve problems. And that's what I saw everybody over there doing.
Yeah, I think it really enables you to think quite broadly across as well as like deeply, in the sense that, for example, my degree was very specific, like nutrition and dietetics. And in order to understand health, at first I was looking at very health-specific, nutrition-specific internships. But I feel like my whole understanding of how people relate to food and eating and how I approach my care when I see a client now sit in front of me is so different, because I did internships in interdisciplinary settings. So looking at how children eat their school lunches at a primary school, looking at how people that are recovering from drug and alcohol addictions relate to food and eating. How do Japanese traditional medicine practitioners talk to their clients that experience like mental health issues, and how that shows up in the way that they eat. And it's just so much broader and vast, and has kind of made me connect with certain groups in Japan, because I think that's another thing. It gives you opportunity to network with people that are already thinking about the things that you're thinking about. So if you have a niche and an interest, you can find those people. So I found people that were a group of eating disorder psychologists in Japan, dietitians and psychologists that meet with Australian dietitians. They kind of already existed. So you can really like find those professional networks that will help you, develop professionally in that sense. Also, personally, I tried things like improv, Muay Thai, writing. Like, you can really develop all those kind of like, all those things that like, really, you did Muay Thai? Like, all these kind of things, but that has like helped in my kind of professional capacity as well, with the lessons learned in those settings. So yeah, you can do so much.
Thank you so much for sharing those experiences. I think one of the things that I'm capturing from all your experiences is this kind of two-way, bilateral relations of what you can give back to the communities and what you learn from these communities to bring here. And I guess that's where all the soft diplomacy comes from as well, on how you're creating impact in these communities, but also, how can we apply this in Australia to improve it? There might be ways, even from developing countries, to be able to learn, new things from new culture, from new different types of doing things. It's very enriching to hear these experiences and what you have learned. So to finish our panel, because I know that they're making me signs of the Q&A. Yeah. Could each of you give me some key tips for future applicants interested in the NCP program? So if you can give me 1, 2 tips, that would be great, so that after this we can finish the panel.
Yeah. So one tip is, irrespective of the outcome of so if you apply once and don't get it, I just encourage you to apply again. There are so many scholars that got it on their second or third round, and just that knowledge of this is a process. The interview, the 4-stage interview process is a process. Each round you develop skills and knowledge and insights. So use it. It's a learning experience, and it's not a one-off. And then I think another tip is to link it back to contribution. So I wrote a few examples, kind of what I included in my own application. But for example, if you know another language, and I kind of described how learning Japanese was empowering for me, and that love of language nurtured there will directly translate to the desire to learn Thai. Or, for example, if you share an example about how you've been able to connect, sustain, develop relationships in like a volunteering capacity, how that ability and skill will translate when you're in country, and how you want to connect with other maybe volunteering organizations or other communities while you're in country as well. So everything that you share, where possible, link how that will also manifest when you're abroad. Yeah.
Spend a little bit more time thinking about yourself and what you actually want. It's kind of a scary idea when you first start going to uni and then thinking, where am I going to go? I don't even know what it's going to look like, my career in a few 5 years. Put it down on paper. Just try writing it down. Write about yourself. See what you actually come up with, and find something that you're sure of. It doesn't even have to be sure of for the next 5 years. You could only be sure of it today, and then you change your mind tomorrow. That's fine. Find something that you want to be passionate about and ignite that passion. Pursue it. And if your passion changes, that's fine. I've learned that you can do that, and it's fine. If anything, it's actually good, because it'll lead you along the path you actually want to live your life by.
Overall, I would say my biggest tip is to embrace the chaos of everything. If you are anything like me and so many other people I know, your program is going to change 1,000 times. Initially, I wanted to do Taiwan, and then that turned into Japan. I wanted to go to maybe Vanuatu or Samoa or Micronesia at one point. But just the logistics of when you're planning it all, it is going to change and flip-flop 1,000,000 times. So please, if you have your initial plan, don't think that just because that changes that it's going to ruin the experience. It makes the experience. And one more thing as well is just realize that everyone else who is applying is just as stressed as you are, and they're not as confident, and they're all, oh my God, should I get this? Everybody thinks that. Every time I step into a room full of NCP scholars, I think, like, how did I get here? Like, I'm not supposed to be here. There's so many amazing people here. But just know that you are capable of doing it. When I applied to go to Japan, I was initially told, oh, I don't know, Japan's quite a popular country, you might not get it. But then I became the fellow. So, like, you have what it takes. If you are in this room, you have the, determination to go to an event like this. So go at it with full speed, because you can do it.
I just have 2 tips, and Lachlan did put it beautifully before, is that this is a great opportunity to get experience outside of the textbooks and outside of the classrooms. For those of us that do international relations as well, I think, especially when we're learning how to write policies for the future, an opportunity like this shows us what the reality is right now, and you're not going to get that from a textbook. So I'd highly encourage anybody interested in doing a new Colombo plan, whether that is mobility or if it's a scholarship, to just do it. This is an opportunity that is not going to be there forever. So whether, in my case, I did environmental health and architecture. Again, I didn't study that, but it was the most interdisciplinary experience I could have possibly got. And I learned so many things that I could translate into my degree that I did not know I could even get. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. It's so good. Clap in a second. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and letting all of us, learn more about the programs that you immerse yourselves and the scholarship. It's been wonderful to hear different experiences and learning more about the NCP programs. So I think now that I've asked so many questions, are there any questions online or here in the panel? Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll pass the microphone.
Yeah, I was curious whether there was consciously something that you sort of look while you were in the program that you went, I want to take something away from this, or even just broadly, I want to sort of get better. And was there sort of a conscious effort to go, this is what I want to take out of the program, this is what I want to gain from it? Or were there ways that just sort of mysteriously happened as you went through it?
Just the time, I guess one person answering.
Yeah, is that one?
I suppose it actually occurred for me before the program. I was explaining this to one of you before. I actually met with an agricultural economist who was now retired, but he had spent a lot of time over in foreign countries implementing different agricultural businesses for them, you could say, or connecting different farmers to suppliers that would need new fruit and vegetable for their markets and helping them improve their farming practices. He had an insane wealth of experiences, spoke 6 languages, understood 11 of them fluently, and had gone from the most beautiful, wonderful stories with beautiful villages to some of the most insane details I had ever heard, where people such as the Taliban themselves came up to him and said, "We like that you're helping our farmers. We will protect you." That's terrifying, but that is also an amazing experience to get. So all I knew going into the program was that I just wanted to experience something different and real. It wasn't just a thing you hear about or a thing you think about. It was a real experience that I wanted to take in as much as I could from it. So anything different, I just wanted to know about. So try things too. That's what I thought.
I just got one for Misa, is that right? So what if we want to do 2 countries? How does that logistically work?
Yeah, so you can actually do, so there's 40 different countries and you can absolutely do more than one country. And it basically is a little bit different in the sense that I initially just planned to go to Thailand. And so my application was all centered around Thailand. And yeah, the process of, when the reality happens and you kind of change your study plan, but you absolutely can, in your application, justify how going to 2 different host locations would benefit your program. So as long as you have an internship component in both countries, you can do, you could do even more than 2 countries. Yeah.
Does anyone else have questions? Yes, Jeffrey.
Sorry, I'll just quickly add to your question really quickly. You don't, as long as you do a component within the country, you don't have to do an internship in both of the countries, I'll probably say. So I know a friend that studied in Thailand and then did like an internship in Cambodia, but like, as long as there's something with that, so you can do language training in either the countries that you internship, but yeah, you should either study or internship in one of the countries. You can absolutely do multiple countries, yes. I even have a friend who did like 3. So yeah, the opportunity is like endless.
This question isn't as practical as the questions that have been asked, but I think all of you, I just wanted to ask, because Misa kind of spoke about the spirit of the Colombo plan. I just wanted to ask 2 or 4 of you maybe, what did the spirit of the Colombo plan really mean to you? I guess in a broad sense, or as specific as you want to be. I think it gives a bit of direction to me, or maybe some of the others here. So what really gave you that?
I'll just reflect a little bit on what Jared mentioned earlier, how this is an opportunity to learn from another country and to share and connect, but it's also an opportunity to bring back something to Australia. And what the new Colombo plan is the Indo-Pacific engagement with Australia. And there's a reason it's the Indo-Pacific, it's our region. And so that's cultural sharing, it's cultural diplomacy, it's soft diplomacy, it's an opportunity to connect with each other. And whether you're doing the scholar program or the mobility, you're going to connect with people. And that's exactly why the new Colombo plan was created, to bring that back here and enhance our cultural abilities in the region.
think, yeah, for time, I think we're going to leave it like that. But yeah, feel free to ask them after. So thank you very much again for sharing your experiences and lots of insights for all the people interested in applying for the NCP program. I'm sure everyone has gained a lot of stories and advice from you. So let's just give a round of applause to our panel.
Thanks very much, Ingrid, and thank you to the panel for your wonderful contributions. I think you have hit the nail on the head. It's about capacitating this country as much as it is anything else. In the past, we had the cultural arrogance to think that everyone could learn everything by coming over and listening to us. It now understands that we actually might learn a bit by going overseas. And I think that makes us stronger for everyone who goes over there and has a cultural understanding of the many cultures that are present in our region. I would also say to you that one of the things that has changed, even in my time being at university, is once upon a time the faces in an audience would all look like me. Now they don't, which is to our great advantage as a country that we are so much more multicultural, and the future belongs to those who in this country who have 1 foot in this country and 1 foot overseas. And you can either do that by your own ethnicity, you're lucky you get it that way anyway, or you can do it by exposing yourself to another culture or cultures. My younger son told me that he spent 2.5 weeks, 6 days a week at a language school before he then went to study at university in Indonesia, but he became a fluent Bahasa Indonesia speaker after that. The opportunity, we bludge off overseas migrants really in Australia in learning and using them to speak overseas languages for us. It's about time that some of the rest of us who were born here take responsibility for learning languages as well. So anyway, what have we got coming up? Well, next week on the 9th of July, we've, oh, don't go away. All right, okay, sorry. All right, so if you want to become a member, you go on the left-hand one, and if you want to look at upcoming events, go on the right-hand one. So on the 9th of July, has Narendra Modi finally reached his peak? The 2024 Indian election. Professor Ian Hall from Griffith University will be speaking at that. Ian from the Griffith Asia Institute. Mr. Modi had quite a few setbacks in his electoral victory. So very interesting to come along and listen to that. I won't be there. I'll be in Normanton and Far North Queensland. But anyway, have fun in my absence. On the 23rd of July, Dr. Connie Kairugan from Griffith University, Global Partnerships for Local and Regenerative Climate Actions. And on the 30th of July, Dr. Scott Waldron from UQ, the third-party plenum, China's economic trajectory and what it means for Australia. And then on the 13th of August, we'll have Professor the Honourable George Brandis, KC, the former High Commissioner of the United Kingdom, UK politics from chaos to calmer waters. So this time tomorrow night, we'll know what's happened in the UK elections, but who better than George to dissect that for us, being a former Federal Attorney General as well. So I think that will also be very interesting. So we have a lot of things. We really would encourage you to join. If you join, it's free to come to our events. And we are doing a lot of work, and I would like to thank Ingrid in particular to have more meaningful functions for our young members, including looking at how we might empower them more in the decision-making of the organisation as well. So thank you very much, everybody. Good to see you.